Rain fell like liquid metal on the alien forest floor as Ravek crouched behind the twisted purple trees. His black armor plates caught the dim light filtering through the canopy above. Each drop that hit him made a soft ping sound. He had been watching the human settlement for 3 days now, and everything he saw confirmed what the Galactic Predator Guild had told him. These creatures were weak. The humans moved slowly through their small camp, carrying strange devices and talking in their soft voices. They had no claws, no natural armor, no sharp teeth. Their skin looked thin and pale. Some of them were barely 5 feet tall. Ravek stood 9 feet when he stretched to his full height. His claws could cut through steel. His jaw could crush bone. These humans would be the easiest hunt of his career. The Quillarian hunter shifted his weight and felt the familiar excitement building in his chest. Back home on his world of Quill, everything was a predator. The plants had thorns that could pierce armor. The smallest insects carried venom that could drop a grown warrior. The very air burned with acid rain during storm season. Only the strongest survived, and only the strongest had the right to hunt. These humans had come from a world they called Earth, and from what Ravek could see, it must have been a paradise. They walked around without checking for threats. They left their shelter doors open. Some of them even went into the forest alone, as if they had never learned to fear anything. It would almost be too easy. The settlement consisted of 12 small buildings arranged in a circle. Solar panels gleamed on their roofs. Gardens grew between the structures, full of strange earth plants that the humans tended carefully. Children played in the open spaces while adults worked on various tasks. Everything looked peaceful and safe. Ravek had studied their technology during his approach. Their weapons were simple projectile throwers, nothing that could penetrate his natural armor. Their vehicles moved on wheels instead of hovering, making them slow and clumsy. Their communication devices seemed primitive compared to Quillarian biotech. The Guild had been right to classify them as a minor threat. The contract was simple. A mining corporation wanted this planet for its rare metal deposits, but the humans had established their research station first. Rather than go through the lengthy legal process of removing them, they had hired the Guild to make the problem disappear. Ravek would eliminate the colonists, stage it to look like an attack by local wildlife, and the corporation could move in within a month. He had done this kind of work before. Usually it involved hunting down criminals or dealing with pirates who threatened shipping lanes. Those targets at least fought back, making the hunt interesting. This job felt different. These humans seemed innocent, focused on their research and their quiet lives. But a contract was a contract, and Ravek needed the payment to upgrade his ship. As he watched, a small human female emerged from one of the buildings. She had brown hair tied back and wore simple work clothes. She carried a bag full of equipment and headed toward the forest edge. Ravek recognized her from his surveillance. The other humans called her Amy, and she was their plant specialist. Every day she ventured into the woods to collect samples and take measurements. Perfect. She would be his first target. Ravek waited until Amy disappeared into the tree line before beginning his approach. He moved silently through the undergrowth, his natural camouflage making him nearly invisible among the alien plants. The rain helped mask any small sounds he might make. His enhanced senses tracked her easily through the forest. The human moved with surprising confidence for such a fragile creature. She stopped frequently to examine plants and take notes on a small device. Sometimes she would talk to herself, describing what she saw. Her voice carried a tone of wonder and excitement that Ravek found puzzling. On Quill, venturing alone into unknown territory was suicide. Here, this human acted like she was taking a pleasant walk. After following her for an hour, Ravek decided the time was right. They were far enough from the settlement that her cries would not be heard. The rain would wash away any evidence. He could make her death look like an attack by one of the local predators he had observed during his reconnaissance. He began to circle around to get ahead of her, moving through the trees with practiced ease. His claws found purchase on the bark while his powerful legs propelled him from branch to branch. Soon he would drop down behind her, end this quickly, and move on to the next target. By sunset, the human settlement would be in chaos as they searched for their missing researcher. Amy stopped in a small clearing where several unusual flowering plants grew in a cluster. She knelt down and began taking detailed photographs, completely unaware of the death that stalked her from above. Ravek positioned himself on a thick branch directly overhead, calculating the angle of his attack. As he prepared to drop down on his prey, something small and dark moved near the human's feet. Ravik paused, studying this new element. It appeared to be some kind of animal, about the size of a house cat but with different coloring. Black and white stripes ran down its back, and it had a broad, flat head with small ears. The human noticed the creature and smiled. "There you are, bandit," she said softly. "I was wondering where you went." The animal looked up at her and made a small chirping sound. It seemed completely comfortable around the human, even affectionate. Ravik had heard that some species kept other animals as companions, but he had never seen it before. On Quill, every creature was either predator or prey. There was no middle ground. This development did not change his plans. If anything, it would make things easier. The small animal would probably run when the attack began, or he could eliminate it as well if necessary. Either way, it posed no threat to a Quillarian hunter. Ravik tensed his muscles and prepared to strike. The rain continued to fall, masking all sound. The human remained focused on her work, completely vulnerable. Her small companion wandered a few feet away, sniffing at the base of a tree. The perfect moment had arrived. Silence filled the forest clearing except for the steady rhythm of raindrops hitting leaves. Ravik drew his legs under him, every muscle coiled like a spring. The human female remained crouched over her samples, completely unaware that death waited 10 feet above her head. Her small companion had wandered closer to Ravik's tree, its black and white fur barely visible in the dim light. With a powerful thrust of his legs, Ravik launched himself from the branch. His claws extended as he fell toward his target, ready to end this hunt in a single strike. The attack was perfect, silent, and deadly. No creature had ever survived his opening assault. The small animal moved faster than physics should have allowed. Before Ravik could complete his descent, the black and white creature spun toward him with incredible speed. Instead of running as any sensible prey would do, it leaped directly at his face with a sound like ripping metal. Tiny claws raked across his snout while sharp teeth sought the gaps in his armor plating. Shock made Ravik twist in midair, ruining his attack angle. He crashed into the soft earth beside Amy instead of landing on top of her. The small creature clung to his head, its claws finding weak spots that no enemy had ever targeted before. Pain shot through his system as those impossibly sharp teeth bit down on his left ear. Amy scrambled backward, her equipment scattering across the ground. Her hand moved to a device on her belt, pressing buttons with trained efficiency. "Emergency beacon activated," she said into the device. "Code orange. Grid reference 247B. Hostile contact." Ravik thrashed his massive head, trying to dislodge his tiny attacker. The creature weighed maybe 20 pounds compared to his 400, but it held on with desperate determination. Every time he reached up to grab it, those claws would slash at his fingers, forcing him to pull back. "Bandit, no!" Amy shouted. "Get away from there!" The animal ignored her completely. It repositioned itself on Ravik's skull and bit down harder, its teeth grinding against the base of his horn. The pain was unlike anything the Quillarian had experienced. This was not the clean pain of combat against an equal opponent. This was the humiliating agony of being mauled by something that should have been a snack. With a roar of frustration, Ravik reached up with both hands and managed to grab the small creature around its middle. He lifted it away from his head, ready to crush it between his claws. The animal's response defied all logic. Instead of struggling to escape, it twisted around and bit his thumb with enough force to draw blood. For the first time in his hunting career, Ravik hesitated. The creature hung from his hand by its teeth, its dark eyes showing absolutely no fear. It should have been terrified. It should have been begging for mercy. Instead, it seemed ready to fight him to the death despite having no chance of winning. Amy had taken cover behind a fallen log, but she was not running away. "Release him," she called out. "He is just protecting me. Let him go and I will come with you quietly." Ravik studied the human with new interest. She was offering to sacrifice herself for this animal, just as the animal had tried to sacrifice itself for her. Neither of them was related to the other by blood or species, yet both showed loyalty that surpassed rational self-interest. On Quill, such behavior would be seen as madness. The strong dominated the weak through fear and power. Loyalty was earned through strength alone. Yet here was a creature so small it could barely harm him, choosing to face certain death rather than abandon its companion. The animal released his thumb and dropped to the ground. Instead of running, it positioned itself between Ravik and Amy, its back arched and its fur standing on end. It made a sound that was part growl, part hiss, and part something else entirely. Whatever language it was speaking, the message was clear. You will have to go through me. Ravik looked from the tiny guardian to the human it protected. Amy was not cowering behind her log. She had her emergency device ready and was watching him with alert, intelligent eyes. She seemed to be evaluating his next move, preparing to react accordingly. This was not the behavior of prey. This was the behavior of a thinking opponent. What are you? Ravik asked in basic Galactic, the trade language most species understood. Amy blinked in surprise. You can speak? I am Quilarian. We are not animals. He gestured toward the small creature that still blocked his path. What is that thing? His name is Bandit. He is a honey badger from Earth. Amy's voice remained steady despite the obvious danger. He is my research companion. Honey badger, Ravik repeated the unfamiliar words. It is trained to fight? Amy almost smiled. No one trains a honey badger to do anything. They do what they want to do. Bandit chose to protect me because that is who he is. Ravik studied the small animal with new respect. In his culture, choice was reserved for the strong. The weak followed orders or died. But this honey badger had made a choice to fight an opponent 40 times its size, not because it was commanded to, but because it wanted to. The sound of approaching vehicles reached them through the rain. Amy's emergency beacon had been answered. Ravik could hear at least 3 different engines and what sounded like human voices calling out search patterns. He had perhaps 2 minutes before they arrived. He could still complete his mission. The honey badger was impressive, but it was still just one small animal. The human was trapped in the clearing with limited escape routes. A quick strike would eliminate both targets before the rescue team arrived. But Ravik found himself reluctant to attack. The honey badger's absolute fearlessness had disturbed something in his mind that he could not identify. This was not the desperate courage of a cornered animal fighting for its life. This was the calm determination of a warrior who had chosen his battle. The vehicles were getting closer. Soon they would emerge from the forest with whatever weapons the humans carried. Ravik needed to make a decision quickly. Kill his targets and escape, or retreat and rethink his approach to this hunt. Bandit took a step forward, his small body tense with readiness. The message was unmistakable. Make your move. For the first time in his career as a hunter, Ravik stepped backward. He looked into the honey badger's dark eyes and saw something that made him uncomfortable. He saw a reflection of the warrior he thought he was, but in a package that made no sense according to everything he had been taught about strength and power. The sound of human voices grew louder. Time had run out. Ravik turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving both his targets alive. As he moved through the trees, he could hear Amy calling to her rescuers, describing the attack and checking on her small guardian. The honey badger's response was a series of chirps and huffs that sounded almost like a battle report. Something had changed in that clearing, though Ravik could not yet understand what it was. The hunt was not over, but it was no longer the simple task he had expected. Deep in the alien forest, Ravik pressed his back against a massive tree trunk and examined his wounds. 3 parallel scratches ran across his snout where the honey badger's claws had found their mark. His left ear throbbed with a pain that seemed far worse than the actual damage. The bite on his thumb had already stopped bleeding, but it served as a constant reminder of what had just happened. A creature weighing 20 pounds had wounded him, not hurt him by accident or through lucky chance, but deliberately targeted weak spots in his armor that even trained Quilarian warriors struggled to find. The small earth animal had fought with a precision that spoke of evolutionary perfection, as if its entire species had been designed for combat against larger opponents. Ravik touched the scratches on his snout and winced. In 300 years of life, through dozens of hunts across 20 different worlds, nothing had ever marked his face. Quilarian armor plating was nearly impenetrable. Their healing factor meant that minor wounds closed within hours. Yet somehow a honey badger had managed to leave scars that would take days to heal. The sound of human search teams echoed through the forest. They were moving in organized patterns, calling out grid coordinates and checking in with each other every few minutes. Their coordination impressed him. Most species he had hunted devolved into panic when one of their members went missing. These humans were responding like a military unit, From his hiding spot, Ravek could observe their search techniques. They moved in pairs, covering ground systematically while maintaining communication with a central coordinator. Each team carried scanning equipment alongside their weapons. They were not just looking for Amy. They were looking for whatever had attacked her. Through gaps in the foliage, he watched two humans approach his general area. One was male with dark skin and gray hair, carrying what appeared to be a medical kit. The other was female with blonde hair, holding a device that beeped softly as she swept it back and forth. Both moved with confidence that suggested extensive training. Heat signature shows something large passed through here recently, the blonde female said into her communicator. Whatever attacked Amy was bigger than local wildlife. The male knelt to examine disturbed earth near Ravek's hiding spot. Claw marks in the soil, deep ones. We are dealing with something that weighs at least 300 pounds. Any sign of it now? Negative. Trail leads east toward the mountains. The male stood and shouldered his medical kit. Whatever it was, it decided not to stick around. They moved on, following the false trail Ravek had deliberately created. As soon as they disappeared, he emerged from cover and began working his way back toward the settlement. He needed to understand what he was truly facing before making another attempt. The human colony looked different when viewed as potential opponents, rather than helpless prey. The buildings were positioned to provide mutual support and overlapping fields of fire. Gardens were planted in patterns that would make stealth approach difficult. Even the children's play area had clear sight lines to multiple defensive positions. These people had not chosen this location randomly. They had selected ground that could be defended. Ravek found a new observation post on a ridge overlooking the settlement. From here he could watch their response to the failed attack without being detected. What he saw challenged everything he thought he knew about human nature. Amy had returned safely, but instead of retreating to the security of the buildings, she was standing in the center of the colony giving a detailed briefing to the other residents. The honey badger sat beside her feet, occasionally adding what sounded like commentary to her report. The other humans listened intently, asking specific questions about the attacker's size, capabilities, and behavior patterns. It spoke basic galactic, Amy was saying. Intelligent, definitely. Possibly Quillarian based on the armor plating and size estimates. An older human male stepped forward. If it is Quillarian, then we are dealing with a professional hunter. They do not give up easily. Recommendations? Asked another voice. Double the watch shifts. No one goes into the forest alone, not even with escort. Emergency beacons on everyone at all times. The older human paused. And we activate the perimeter defenses. Ravek watched with growing concern as the humans dispersed to implement their security measures. Hidden weapon emplacements rose from concealed positions around the colony. Force field generators hummed to life, creating an invisible barrier that would stop most projectiles. Sensor arrays extended from rooftops, scanning the surrounding forest with military-grade efficiency. Within an hour, the peaceful research station had transformed into a fortified outpost. These were not the helpless academics he had expected. They were prepared for war, but what disturbed him most was the behavior of their animals. As the humans worked to secure their colony, various Earth creatures moved among them with obvious purpose. Dogs patrolled the perimeter with alert efficiency. Cats positioned themselves at elevated vantage points. Even small rodents seemed to be contributing to the defensive effort, and there were more honey badgers. Ravek counted at least 3 others, each one moving with the same fearless confidence that Bandit had displayed. They showed no concern for the increased tension or the obvious preparations for combat. If anything, they seemed eager for another confrontation. As darkness fell, Ravek realized that his entire approach had been wrong. These humans were not soft colonists who had stumbled onto a habitable world. They were experienced survivors who had chosen to settle in hostile territory because they were confident in their ability to defend themselves. The guild's intelligence had been fatally flawed. Someone had deliberately misled them about the true nature of these targets. But who would benefit from sending a Quillarian hunter against prepared opponents? And why had they chosen this particular colony? A new sound reached his ears from the settlement below. The humans were singing together while they worked on their defenses. Their voices blended in harmonies that spoke of long practice and shared experiences. Even their animals seemed to respond to the music, with some of the dogs joining in with howls that complemented the human melody. Ravek had never heard anything like it. On Quill, Warriors fought in silence or with battle cries meant to intimidate enemies. This was something else entirely. This was a people preparing for war while celebrating their unity. The honey badger named Bandit emerged from one of the buildings and walked directly to the colony's edge. It stood facing the forest where Ravek was hidden, its small body silhouetted against the lights of the settlement. For a long moment it seemed to be staring directly at him across the darkness. Then it did something that chilled Ravek to his core. The honey badger sat down and waited, as if it knew exactly where the Quilarian was hiding and was prepared to stay there all night if necessary. This was not the behavior of a simple animal acting on instinct. This was strategic thinking from a creature that understood its enemy and was ready to face him again. The honey badger was challenging him to return, confident that the outcome would be different next time. Ravik found himself backing away from his observation post, unwilling to meet that steady gaze. For the first time in his life, he was retreating from a creature that weighed less than his smallest claw. Something fundamental had shifted in his understanding of what it meant to be a predator. These humans and their companions had shown him a kind of courage that existed without regard for size or strength. They were small, but they were not weak. They were vastly outnumbered, but they were not helpless. They were something entirely new in his experience, and he was no longer certain that he could hunt them at all. 3 days passed before Ravik attempted another approach to the human settlement. The wounds on his face had healed, but they left silver scars that would mark him for life. Every time he caught his reflection in still water, he was reminded of his encounter with the honey badger. No Quilarian had ever been scarred by prey before. During those 3 days, he had studied the humans from a distance, learning their routines and looking for weaknesses. What he discovered only deepened his confusion about these strange creatures. They had not cowered behind their defenses after his attack. Instead, they had adapted their daily activities to account for the threat while continuing their research. Amy still went into the forest, but now she traveled with companions. Groups of humans would venture out together, always maintaining communication with the base, always watching for signs of danger. Their confidence troubled him. They moved like people who had faced predators before and survived. On the morning of the 4th day, Ravek decided to test their defenses more directly. He approached the settlement from the south, using a creek bed to mask his heat signature from their sensors. The plan was simple: create a distraction to draw out their security teams, then observe how they responded to a direct threat. He emerged from the water near the colony's southern edge and deliberately triggered one of their perimeter alarms. Immediately, lights blazed to life across the settlement. Voices called out warnings and coordinates. The humans moved with practiced efficiency, taking defensive positions while their scanning equipment searched for the intruder. What happened next shattered every assumption Ravek had about Earth creatures. The first responders were not humans. They were dogs. 4 large canines burst from concealed positions around the settlement's edge, moving with military precision. These were not the small pets Ravek had observed from afar. These were working animals, each one weighing over 60 pounds and built for combat. Their coats were thick and dark, their eyes alert and intelligent. Behind the dogs came their human partners, but the animals were clearly leading the response. They spread out in a tactical formation that would have impressed Quilarian military instructors, each dog covering a specific zone while maintaining visual contact with the others. Ravek pressed himself against a boulder, hoping his natural camouflage would keep him hidden. One of the dogs, a massive German shepherd with gray markings, approached his position with its nose to the ground. The animal's training was obvious in every movement. This was not a pet that had been taught to fetch and sit. This was a warrior. The dog stopped 10 feet from Ravek's hiding spot and made a low sound in its throat. Not a bark or growl, but something like a tactical signal. Immediately, the other 3 dogs adjusted their positions to surround the boulder. They had found him. A human voice called out from behind them. "What do you have, Rex?" The gray dog responded with a series of short barks that sounded almost like code. The human translated immediately. Large hostile, armed, hiding behind the south boulder. Ravik realized with growing alarm that the dogs and humans were communicating in a tactical language he could not understand. This was not simple obedience training. This was battlefield coordination between equal partners. "Come out slowly," a female voice commanded. "We have you surrounded." Ravik considered his options. He could fight his way out, but that would mean harming the dogs, and something about that prospect bothered him more than he cared to admit. These animals were showing the same fearless determination that the honey badger had displayed, but with the added element of coordinated teamwork. Before he could decide, the choice was made for him. Two small black and white shapes streaked past the dogs and positioned themselves directly in front of his hiding spot. Honey badgers. One was Bandit, whom he recognized from their previous encounter. The other was slightly larger with different markings. The new honey badger looked directly at Ravik and made a sound that was unmistakably a challenge. "Come out and face us," it seemed to say. "We are ready." Slowly, Ravik emerged from behind the boulder with his hands visible and empty. The dogs maintained their positions but did not attack. The honey badgers showed no fear whatsoever, despite facing an opponent who could crush them without effort. The human security team approached with weapons drawn, but not aimed directly at him. Their leader was a woman with short red hair and the bearing of a military veteran. She studied Ravik with professional interest rather than fear. "Quilarian hunter," she said matter-of-factly. "Guild registration number?" The question surprised him. "How do you know about the guild?" "We know a lot about a lot of things." She gestured toward his scarred face. "I see you have already met our honey badgers. How did that work out for you?" Ravik touched his scars unconsciously. "Your animals fight without fear. They fight with purpose," the woman corrected. "There is a difference." As they talked, more humans emerged from the settlement, but they brought more animals with them. Ravik counted 6 dogs of various breeds, 4 honey badgers, 2 cats that moved like liquid shadows, and several smaller creatures he could not identify. All of them seemed alert and ready for action. What disturbed him most was their obvious unity. The humans did not command the animals. They communicated with them. The dogs would look to their human partners for guidance, but the honey badgers operated with complete independence, while still coordinating with the group effort. "Why are you here?" the red-haired woman asked. "I was contracted to eliminate your colony," Ravik answered honestly. Something about these creatures made deception seem pointless. "By whom?" "Mining Corporation." "They want your planet." The woman nodded as if this was not surprising news. "And now?" Ravik looked around at the assembled defenders. Every human face showed determination rather than fear. Every animal seemed ready to fight despite the obvious size disadvantage. They were outnumbered by exactly one, him, but they stood as if they held all the advantages. "Now I am not certain I can complete the contract," he admitted. One of the honey badgers, not Bandit but the larger one, approached Ravik until it was less than 3 feet away. It sat down and tilted its head, studying him with dark, intelligent eyes. The message was clear: "We are not afraid of you." A young human male stepped forward. "May I?" When Ravik nodded, the human addressed him directly. "What would it take for you to abandon the contract?" "Proof that you are not the easy targets I was told you were," the human smiled. "Look around you. A Quilarian hunter is surrounded by humans and earth animals, all of whom are smaller than him, all of whom are willing to fight him. What does that tell you about us?" Ravik looked from face to face, human and animal alike. He saw no terror, no desperate bravado, no false courage. He saw beings who had chosen to stand together against a superior opponent because they believed in something worth defending. "It tells me that Earth must be a very dangerous world to produce such fearless creatures. The most dangerous in the galaxy," the red-haired woman confirmed. "And we learned long ago that the only way to survive dangerous worlds is to stand together." The honey badger at Ravik's feet made a soft chirping sound and stood up. It walked over to his leg and incredibly rubbed against his armor plating like a cat seeking attention. The gesture was so unexpected, so trusting, that Ravik felt something shift in his understanding of strength and power. This small creature had nearly killed him 3 days ago. Now it was treating him like a potential friend. The honey badger was not weak or foolish. It was giving him a choice: enemy or ally. For the first time in his hunting career, Ravik began to consider that there might be alternatives to completing his contract. The human medical facility was unlike anything Ravik had seen before. Instead of sterile walls and intimidating equipment, the room felt warm and welcoming. Soft lighting cast gentle shadows while quiet music played in the background. Most surprising of all, animals moved freely throughout the space, checking on patients and providing what the humans called comfort therapy. Ravik sat on a reinforced examination table while Dr. Amy Foster cleaned the bite wound on his thumb. The injury had become infected during his 3 days in the forest, and the human medical team had insisted on treating it. Beside the table, Bandit watched the procedure with what seemed like professional interest. "Hold still," Amy said as she applied antiseptic to the wound. "Honey badger saliva has some unique properties that can cause complications if not properly treated. Your animal nearly severed my thumb," Ravik observed. "He was protecting me from someone trying to kill me," Amy replied without looking up. "Under the circumstances, I think he showed remarkable restraint." The comment made Ravik examine his assumptions about the encounter. From the honey badger's perspective, he had been defending his companion from a massive predator. The animal could have aimed for Ravik's eyes or throat, potentially causing fatal damage. Instead, Bandit had focused on causing pain and confusion, giving Amy time to escape. He was not trying to kill me, Ravik realized. Honey badgers are fierce, but they are not mindless killers, Amy explained. Bandit wanted to stop you, not murder you. There is a difference. As she worked, Amy shared what she called Earth's evolutionary history. Her planet had endured multiple extinction events, ice ages, volcanic catastrophes, and asteroid impacts. Each disaster had eliminated the weak and timid, leaving only species capable of extreme survival. But Earth's most successful creatures had not survived through individual strength alone. Cooperation was our species' greatest adaptation, Amy said as she bandaged his thumb. Humans learned to work with wolves, horses, birds of prey, even insects. We did not domesticate them in the traditional sense. We formed partnerships. Partnerships require equals, Ravik pointed out. These animals are much smaller than humans. Amy gestured toward Bandit, who was now curled up on a cushion near the examination table. Size has nothing to do with equality. Bandit makes decisions that I respect. I make decisions that he respects. Neither of us commands the other. To demonstrate, Amy called Bandit's name softly. The honey badger looked up but did not move. Amy made a small gesture with her hand, and Bandit responded by walking over to her. But when she pointed toward a different part of the room, the animal ignored her completely, choosing instead to investigate an interesting smell near the door. He obeys when it makes sense to him, Amy explained. He ignores me when he has better ideas. That is how partnerships work. The medical bay's door opened to admit Dr. Sarah Chen, the colony's xenobiologist. She carried a portable display device and seemed excited about something. I have those Earth archives you requested, she told Amy. The footage should help explain things. The display activated to show scenes from Earth that challenged everything Ravik thought. He knew about natural selection, lions retreating from honey badgers despite outweighing them by 400 pounds, dolphins protecting human swimmers from shark attacks, dogs sacrificing themselves to save human children from burning buildings. This makes no evolutionary sense, Ravik protested. Why would predators surrender to smaller opponents? Why would one species risk death for another? Because Earth taught us that survival is not about being the strongest, Sarah explained. It is about being part of the strongest group. A lone lion is powerful, but a pack of wolves can bring down anything. A single human is vulnerable, but humans with animal allies can survive anywhere. The footage continued with examples that defied Quillarian understanding of natural order. Orcas working with human fishermen to catch fish, sharing the profits equally. Chimpanzees learning human sign language and teaching it to their offspring. Ravens solving complex puzzles to help human researchers understand their intelligence. Your world created thinking partnerships between species, Ravik said slowly, not dominance hierarchies. Exactly. Amy finished bandaging his thumb and sat down across from him. When humans first left Earth, we brought our closest partners with us. Dogs, cats, horses, honey badgers, and dozens of other species. We are not conquerors spreading across the galaxy. We are a coalition. The implications troubled Ravik deeply. His entire understanding of strength and power was based on Quillarian principles. The strong dominated the weak through fear and force. But these Earth creatures operated on completely different principles. They chose their loyalties and fought not from fear but from love. On my world, such cooperation would be seen as weakness, he admitted. That is why Earth creatures would terrify your world, Sarah replied. Imagine trying to conquer a planet where the grass itself might be allied with the defenders, where every animal from the smallest insect to the largest predator might choose to fight against you. The display showed final images that left Ravek speechless. Human cities where wild animals moved freely among the buildings, not as pets or prisoners but as citizens. Forests where humans and wolves hunted together as equal partners. Oceans where whales and humans shared information about currents and weather patterns. We did not tame Earth, Amy said quietly. We learned to belong to it, and it taught us that the strongest partnerships are built on choice, not force. Bandit stood up from his cushion and approached Ravek's chair. The honey badger looked up at the massive alien and made a soft questioning sound. When Ravek lowered his hand, Bandit sniffed it carefully, then allowed the Quillarian to touch his head. The gesture was more meaningful than any treaty or alliance. This small creature, who had every reason to hate and fear him, was offering friendship. Not because he had been commanded to, but because he chose to. He is giving you a chance, Amy observed. The question is, what will you do with it? Ravek looked around the medical bay at the humans and animals who had treated his wounds and shared their history with him. They had every reason to consider him an enemy. Instead, they had welcomed him as a potential friend. The guild contract still existed. The mining corporation still wanted this planet. But Ravek was beginning to understand that some things were more valuable than money or reputation. These creatures had shown him a different way of thinking about strength and power, and he was no longer the same hunter who had arrived 4 days ago. The choice was his to make, just as Bandit had made his choice to trust. For the first time in his long life, Ravek began to understand what it meant to choose loyalty over fear. The morning sun painted the alien sky in shades of purple and gold as Ravek stood at the edge of the human settlement. His ship waited in orbit, its guild transponder broadcasting readiness to receive his mission report. One simple transmission would complete the contract and transfer payment to his accounts. Another Quillarian hunter would take his place within days to finish what he had started, but Ravek could not send that transmission. Behind him, the human colony was beginning its daily routine. Children laughed as they played games with young dogs and cats. Adults tended gardens where earth plants grew alongside alien species. Amy Foster emerged from her laboratory with Bandit at her side, ready for another day of research in the forest that had once been Ravek's hunting ground. Everything looked peaceful and normal, but Ravek now understood the deception. This was not a settlement of helpless academics. This was a community of survivors who had chosen to build something beautiful in a dangerous universe. They were not weak because they cared for each other. They were strong because of it. Dr. Sarah Chen approached from the main building carrying a steaming cup of what humans called coffee. The aroma was pleasant, unlike the harsh stimulants favored on Quill. She offered it to Ravek, who accepted it with careful claws. "Still planning to complete your contract?" she asked. Ravek sipped the hot liquid and considered the question. "The guild expects results."
"If I fail, they will send others. That is not what I asked." The directness was typical of these humans.
They spoke plainly about difficult topics instead of hiding behind formal language and protocol. Ravek had grown to appreciate their honesty during his week as their reluctant guest. "No," he admitted. "I cannot complete the contract." "But that creates new problems," Sarah nodded. "The mining corporation will not give up. They will hire more hunters. Quillarians do not abandon profitable contracts easily. They will send stronger hunters, perhaps an entire pack." "How many in a pack?" "Usually 5 to 12 individuals, armed with military-grade equipment and supported by assault vessels." Ravek set down his coffee and faced the settlement. "Your defenses would not survive a coordinated attack by multiple hunters. Then we need to prevent that attack." The voice belonged to Colonel Martinez, the settlement's security chief. She had approached quietly, moving with the trained silence of a veteran soldier. Beside her walked Rex, the large German shepherd who had first detected Ravek's presence. Both human and dog seemed alert but not hostile. "What do you propose?" Ravek asked. "Information warfare," Martinez replied. "The guild operates on profit margins. If we can prove that hunting humans is unprofitable, they will abandon the contracts." "How?" "By showing them what happened to you." Ravek touched the silver scars on his snout unconsciously. "I was defeated by a honey badger. The guild would see that as personal failure, not evidence of human strength." "No," Martinez smiled. "You were converted by exposure to Earth Coalition principles. That is much more dangerous from their perspective." Over the next hour, Martinez outlined her plan. Instead of hiding from the guild, they would send them a detailed report about Earth species and their partnership with humans. Video evidence would show honey badgers facing down creatures 40 times their size. Documentation would prove that human-animal partnerships created tactical advantages that no individual predator could match. We make ourselves too expensive to hunt, Martinez explained. Guilds avoid contracts that result in hunter casualties or defections. Bad for business. The plan had merit, but it required Ravik to publicly abandon his contract and request asylum with the humans. Such an action would destroy his reputation within Quilarian society and mark him as a traitor to his own species. Amy Foster appeared at his elbow, having approached while he considered the implications. Bandit trotted beside her, showing no fear of the massive alien who had tried to kill his partner a week ago. The honey badger had accepted Ravik as part of their extended group, with the same matter-of-fact attitude he showed toward everything else. "What are you afraid of?" Amy asked gently. "I would lose everything. My ship, my status, my place in Quilarian society. Would you lose anything that actually matters?" The question struck him like a physical blow. Ravik looked around at the humans and animals who had welcomed him despite every reason to consider him an enemy. Children waved at him from across the settlement. Dogs included him in their daily patrols. Even the honey badgers treated him as part of their extended pack. On Quill, respect was earned through fear and maintained through violence. Here, respect was freely given and maintained through trust. The difference was profound and uncomfortable, but it was also liberating. A new sound reached them from the sky. Ravik's enhanced hearing identified it immediately. A guild transport approaching the planet's atmosphere. His replacement had arrived ahead of schedule. "Keth?" Ravik muttered. "The guild sent Keth. Someone you know?" Martinez asked. "My hunting partner for the past 50 years. He is efficient." Unlike Ravik, Keth would not hesitate or question orders. The new hunter would study the settlement for exactly as long as necessary to plan an optimal attack, then execute it with mechanical precision. There would be no captured prey, no meaningful conversation, no opportunity for the humans to demonstrate their partnership with Earth animals. Keth would simply kill them all and move on to the next contract. "How long before he attacks?" Amy asked. 6 hours for reconnaissance. Attack at dawn tomorrow." Martinez was already moving toward the settlement's communication center. "Then we start the plan now. Are you willing to send that message to the guild?" Ravik looked down at Bandit, who was sitting patiently beside Amy's feet. The honey badger met his gaze without fear or judgment, simply waiting to see what choice the big alien would make. In those dark eyes, Ravik saw a reflection of the warrior he had always believed himself to be, but had never truly understood. Strength was not about size or weapons, or the ability to inflict fear. Strength was about choosing to protect something worth defending even when the odds were impossible. "Yes," Ravik said. "I will send the message." The recording took 3 hours to prepare properly. Ravik spoke directly to the Guild Council, formally abandoning his contract and requesting asylum with the human coalition. He detailed his observations about Earth species and their tactical capabilities. Most importantly, he warned that hunting humans would result in casualties that far exceeded any possible profit. As he finished the transmission, Bandit approached and rubbed against his leg. The gesture had become familiar over the past week. It was the honey badger's way of saying, "You are part of our pack now." Ravik reached down and carefully scratched behind the small animal's ears. "Thank you for teaching me what courage really means," Amy smiled. "He says you are welcome, and that Keth will have to go through all of us if he wants to hurt our family." Outside, the sun was setting behind alien mountains. Tomorrow would bring another hunter who believed that humans were easy prey. But tomorrow that hunter would face something unprecedented in guild history. A Quilarian defender fighting alongside Earth's most fearless creatures. Ravik looked forward to showing his former partner just how wrong the guild's assumptions really were. Some lessons he had learned were best taught through direct experience. The honey badger at his feet made a small sound that might have been laughter. After all, Bandit had been trying to teach that same lesson to oversized predators his entire life. Now he had help,